Board of Zoning Appeals this 23rd of October, 2017. The first item on the agenda is to review the minutes from the last meeting. Do I hear any suggested changes or an approval or a motion to approve the minutes?
Making a motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, raise your right hand. Pass. The next item on the agenda is to choose a temporary vice chairman. I would like to make a recommendation to the board that we delay this until we have a full board, which would be until the council selects another person for the board. In addition, it's kind of, if we have a temporary vice chairman, I'm already vice chairman, I'm acting as chairman, so it gets to be kind of confusing. So I would recommend that we wait to vote until we have the full board, so which would be sometime in January next year. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been brought up as a recommendation and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried, so we'll delay that item on the agenda and take it off of today's agenda. The next item on the agenda is for public comment on the non-agenda. So most of you are here for a particular thing tonight, I understand. Is there anybody that wants to speak other than the issue about the cell tower tonight? Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is staff update on issues. I'm not sure what we mean by that.
We didn't really have a good update for you this time. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. Remember some time ago, that when significant projects come to our attention or some trends developing with projects or with issues that are coming down the pike, we would kind of bring you up to speed on those. Sometimes those things kind of hit the table before you're aware of it. Right now, there's nothing on the immediate horizon of that sort that we felt like we addressed today, but we will probably come back to you in the next few months about a few issues that we're looking at that could affect some of the processes we use, could affect how enforcement of property maintenance issues are done in the field. May also know council and planning commissioner heavily into review, border planning, and a number of other issues like multifamily development. Several others, items that are kind of on their plate right now. In fact, they have a workshop tomorrow night, planning commission, council to have a workshop to discuss a lot of those issues. That'll be a interesting process that's happening in the next few months.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the reason that most of you are here, and that's to review the special exception. Let me just cover a couple of things about, I know that this is a heavily charged issue, and we've seen some of the communication from you, and obviously you feel strongly about the issue, and we want to hear it. We want to hear from you, but we want to do it in an orderly manner and in a timely manner. I think we have 12 people signed up, and if everybody took their 5 minutes, that's 60 minutes of testimony, and there'll probably be a whole lot of overlap between what you all are saying. And I don't think you want to sit there for 60 minutes, nor do we, to be honest. So what I ask is, and when it's your turn to speak, if there's a subject, if there's a topic that is it's already been covered, try not to say the same thing all over again. And then if you can deal with less than your 5 minutes, God bless you. That would be good that we get to move on a little bit faster. The only thing to remember is that the only one that's really permitted to speak is this person at the platform. So if you have something to say, you should have either signed up, but if it's something that you do want to talk about, you can raise your hand, and if you're recognized by the chair, then you can speak. But don't just shout out or make comments during the meeting. That's disruptive to the whole process that we have. So I hope you understand that and appreciate that. So the item tonight is the special exception for application SE 17-000004, special exception request for the construction of 165 monopole wireless telecommunications tower at 615 North Highway 11, West Union, South Carolina, tax partial ID number 147-00-03-087. And the way we're going to go through this is that we first have a statement of matter before the board, which will be done by staff that will describe to us all what the matter is. Then the applicant will have 5 minutes to discuss the reasons for the putting up the pole. Then staff will have 5 minutes to comment on that and to clarify. Then the opposition can speak, and again, up to 5 minutes a person, but hopefully less. And then there'll be, the applicant can then have a rebuttal for 3 minutes. And then there'll be questions from the board at that time. Although we sometimes have questions from the board as somebody is speaking, that's permissible as well. Okay, so the next item is statement of matter before the board. Could we have that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I do that, let me formally introduce to you Sherry Williams, who's our new planner on staff, and we have been looking forward to having her here because we need help. And she has a lot of experience in this field. She's worked in Anderson County for many years and doing similar activities and dealing with just the kinds of things we do. So she's got a lot of experience to bring to the table. So we look forward to working with her. I hope she'll be available to help you out whenever you need. If you have a question and you need to call somebody and reach somebody here at the office and I'm not available, feel free to ask for Sherry. We'll get you an answer.
Well, welcome, Sherry. We look forward to working with you. I know that we do need the help.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this case is a request, as you said, for a special exception approval for a 165-foot monopole cell tower at on property that's identified by the address 615 North Highway 11. And this, of course, is near West Union and not up the road from Itron. Access off of 11 into this area is a kind of essentially a farm site, and there's a house on this property. There's a barn, at least one. There may be other barns that I don't know about. As you know, the area is primarily rural and agricultural in character, featuring fairly large parcels of property on that side of the highway. The area, the property in question also does have a 100-year floodplain section. Area of the property is in floodplain because of a creek that crosses the subject property. However, the request involves a site that would not be within that 100-year floodplain location. The Burns Mill residential subdivision is located east across Highway 11 from this property. I think it's about an 18-lot development. Dindy subdivision is about 700 feet north of the subject property, but there's no internal access between that development and this area. Dindy's got a single entrance on the Fowler Road, and as you may know, Fowler Road is right there near Walhall Elementary School. So anyway, the lot area in question is about 25 acres, fairly large tract. This is a control-free district. I've heard some folks refer to the zoning and that sort of thing of the area, and but as you understand, this is control-free, meaning that there are severe limits on very few limits on the types of uses permitted in a control-free zone. However, with a communications tower, if it is not on a co-location situation or below a certain height, any communications tower of that sort, that variety, and that would include this one, is required to receive approval, consideration, review and approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals as a special exception. So even though it is a control-free zone, certain uses are given special consideration because of the potential impact that they may have, and of course, cell towers qualify in that. If you're looking at what the reference, county code references are on this, there are really several. One is under Article 4, which is about communication towers specifically, and it really has a ton of requirements in that section about what you have to submit, what you have to do to comply. Those are all requirements that would apply regardless of, if the board approved the request, all these requirements would come into play in the review process. Section 32-131 through section 32-142, that's the area that is in the Unified Development Code, and that includes a lot of stuff on, as I said, on the requirements for developing or installing a cell tower. And we'll go through those in more detail. In fact, I would suspect the applicant will highlight a few of those issues for you as well. It's in their packet that they submitted that covers how they intend to abide by all those requirements. Then section 38-7.2 is under the zoning part of the section of the, or code of the zoning portion of the code, and that deals specifically with special exceptions and those criteria that you're fairly familiar with, that we'll also go over later, that you are obliged to consider in reviewing a request to determine whether or not the applicant's application and request meets those criteria that are specifically laid out for special exception approvals. See if there's anything else we need to cover on that. This is a stealth tower. You probably got that in the drawing in your packet. If not, I'm sure the applicant will show you that in the PowerPoint. Stealth towers are encouraged anyway, and particularly in a circumstance like this one, so that would mean that it has features that would hopefully reduce that visual impact that you sometimes get. There are opportunities for co-locations and placement of towers that don't exceed 75 feet that I think I mentioned earlier, where the zoning administrator can address those without going to the board. Of course, as we said earlier, this is not one of those situations. I think I mentioned in a staff report that I put in front of you that one of the key areas of concern is setbacks and making sure that you're outside. If you have a house in the area, that it's outside the so-called fall zone of the structure, which the applicant has demonstrated will be the case in this situation. There is a barn that would be within the fall zone. The applicant can address that for you as to the status of that barn, which normally would not be considered a habitable structure unless it had been deemed so by our county staff in terms of code review for building permits. There are other issues on setbacks. Obviously, the tower, it has to be a certain distance from historic districts and structures. There really aren't any situations of that kind that apply in this area. Also has to be have that fall zone distance from things like churches, schools, colleges, certain types of public facilities, hospitals, things of that sort. And the applicant is certified that this structure will not be in an area of that sort, so the fall zone distance would not apply to that section. your packet will include, or does include, a lot of the engineering data, site and appearance data, that you can kind of look over as you please, but I think the applicant will also give you in her presentation a full rundown of the visual stuff that really shows you what the impact is in an area. The pictures you have in your packet, unfortunately, are in black and white, so they don't help you too much with the site testing, with the balloon test, as they call it, that you'll see in there. You really can't see much from that. You'll be able to see it much better with the color photos that will be on the screen. Then at the bottom of the staff report, we outline the things that, as you're familiar with, come out of section 38.7-.2 about the criteria that you are obliged to consider in approving a special exception. One of the items 1 through 4. With that, that's all we have for now. If you have any other questions,
Okay, thank you.
those later.
Thank you very much. So the first part of the second part of this is for the applicant to speak, and you have 5 minutes. And if you could just give your name and then you get 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Laura Good. I'm with Baker Donaldson, and we represent Verizon Wireless. My business address is 1501 Main Street, Columbia, South Carolina. I'm licensed in North Carolina and have associated with Kara Cochran, also with Baker Donaldson, also an attorney for Verizon Wireless, who is licensed in South Carolina. At this time, I would like to enter into the record a copy of the application as filed with Exhibits 1 through 19. There is a significant amount of information I have to cover. I will do my best to try to cover it in 5 minutes, but I would respectfully ask for a little leeway if there's still information you need to hear from me. I guess I will just go to the first part. Can we wait until we get the PowerPoint presentation up?
Find the right place.
No, I think I believe that is our application, and there's a document behind it labeled String Bean Hearing Presentation. There we go.
Right here.
Yes, okay. So as you can see, this is just an aerial view of the proposed site. And if you keep scrolling down, there will be a closer view of that site, and also shows further down where on the property with the parcel lines this will be located. All right. So I guess I just want to start with saying that we also submitted with our application a copy of the search area map that was Exhibit 4 to the application, and this is also contained in our presentation. I believe that this might have created a little bit of confusion for folks that were looking at this tower. The search area map is some distance from the actual tower location. This is just basically issued by the Verizon Wireless engineer as identified as the optimal location for us to site the tower. And you work out from the center of that search area. Unfortunately, we were not able to site the tower in that search area. Mary Pat Tyndall with Fastcom Communications did site acquisition for this site. She drove around in that search area looking for places first to co-locate the equipment, because the first choice is to look for either towers, tall structures, electrical transmission towers where this facility could be co-located. Unfortunately, within the search area and within an equal distance outside of the search area as the tower is, there were not any structures for co-location. That is certainly Verizon. Not only is it a requirement of the county ordinance, but it's Verizon's first preference, because it is much quicker to co-locate and it is much cheaper. This type of a new tower site takes several years between the environmental approvals, the county approvals, construction, things of that nature, and it is significantly more expensive. So if we could have co-located this equipment, we certainly would have done that. Ms. Tyndall's inability to co-locate certification was submitted as Exhibit 7 of the application. We also included in the application Ms. Tyndall's tower separation certification. There's a requirement in the county's ordinance that no new towers can be within 1,300 feet of an existing tower, and her certification is Exhibit 8 of the application, certifying that there are no existing towers within 1,300 feet of the tower location. The purpose of this tower was illustrated in Exhibit 3 to the application. That was the network objective that was written by the Verizon Wireless engineer for this site. The purpose is to offload wireless capacity for an existing Verizon Wireless site, the Walhalla town site, which is right down the street from here. Verizon's already located on that tower. It's already serving this area. However, each individual wireless facility has a finite level of service that it can provide. It has a finite capacity. So what this means is when residents and who are Verizon Wireless users, when their usage exceeds that capacity for that tower, either through voice calls, but mainly through using internet on their mobile devices, basically that tower ceases to provide the service. You're going to have cut off calls, you're going to have inability to send text messages, and you're going to have the inability to use the internet on your mobile devices. So a new tower is required, and so that's what this tower will do. It will improve service in this area, and also from that capacity offload for the Walhalla town site, it will improve the wireless service in Walhalla as well. In terms of setbacks, this tower did need to be set back tower height from all property lines. This is illustrated on sheet C1 of Exhibit 5. In terms of the barn that is located near the tower, and you can keep going down, I believe the, again, I think the PDF that you're trying to go for is the one behind what you're using right now. If you click on the String Bean hearing presentation, there we go. That's the document, if you click on that. Okay, so there, all right. So there's the overall, that's the overall site plan, and that shows that we meet all the tower setbacks. That dashed circle shows the fall zone for the tower, showing that it will be contained within the property lines and will not cross any property lines in the very unlikely event of tower failure. There is an existing barn within that fall zone radius. However, it does not meet the minimum standards for human occupancy. It is an open-air barn. It is at the lowest occupancy group in the building codes, which are attached as Exhibits 19A and B of the application. Therefore, it is permitted to be within the fall zone radius per the ordinance requirements. In the interest of time, since I only have 5 minutes, I would say that the application as submitted goes through in detail each of the tower requirements in the ordinance and explains how each of these ordinance requirements will be met. If you have any questions about the specific tower ordinance requirements, I would be happy to answer any of those that you may have. However, then I was going to move to the findings of fact for the board tonight. Okay. The first finding of fact for the board, and we wrote extensive written explanations for this in Exhibit 1, starting on page 17 of our application. The first finding of fact is that the use is in accordance with the comprehensive plan and is consistent with the spirit, purposes, and the intent and specific requirements of this chapter to include the definition and intent of the district in which the special exception is being requested. To start with the control-free district, there's not a definition for that district. It's just the intent for that district to be the baseline district unless there's a rezoning in the county. So there's no definition for us to comply with there. In terms of the comprehensive plan, we are in line with Goal 2 to identify, develop, and utilize all tools necessary to meet the present and future economic development of Oconee County with the specific objective to continue to actively promote the recruitment of employment opportunities that provide the best lifestyle for all Oconee residents. With wireless service becoming a necessity for not only for private individuals, but for businesses as well. This increased wireless capacity and improvement in wireless service here will allow for businesses to use that service, which meets the standard of that goal. The second finding of fact is that the use will be in the best interests of the county, the convenience of the community, and the public welfare. This facility will be constructed to be in compliance with all federal, state, and local laws. We meet the FAA requirements as shown by Exhibit 9, the airspace. It's not of a sufficient height where we need to have the tower lit. It's not going to pose any hazard to aircraft. We've produced our FCC licenses showing that we're licensed to operate in the county. We've also produced an engineer's statement certifying that the radio frequency levels from the tower will be well below what the FCC requirements are. Also, the improved wireless capacity will benefit Oconee County citizens, specifically in emergency situations and placing 911 calls. As of the end of 2016, American households are now majority wireless-only households, meaning that not only on a day-to-day communication basis do they need wireless service, but they also need it especially in emergency service, in emergency situations. The tower will also be available if emergency services in Oconee County want to co-locate on that tower for their facilities. The third finding of fact is that the use is suitable for the property in question and designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to be in harmony with and appropriate in appearance to the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. This is in the control-free district. All of the surrounding properties are in the control-free district. Towers are permitted as a special exception in the control-free district, so the tower would be permitted on all surrounding properties as a special exception, showing that it would be in harmony with the area. Again, the property is over 25 acres. The tower will be set back over 370 feet from the adjacent Highway 11 right-of-way. It will be set back in an existing wooded section, and those trees will be maintained around the perimeter of the facility to provide additional vegetative screening for the base of the tower. The tower will also be a monopine stealth design, as shown in the visual simulations to reduce the visual impact. And as shown in those visual simulations, specifically, the most visible part of the tower will be as you drive along Highway 11, specifically going south, facing the tower. This just shows the balloon test and photo simulation locations to show you where those photos were taken. And if you keep going down on this presentation, it will show you the balloon photos, but if you just keep going, then it will get to the actual photo simulations. That's from Highway 11. Keep going down. As you can see there, you cannot see it looking northeast or northwest towards the site. If you keep going down, this is at the intersection of Bryson Road and Highway 11. You can't see it from there due to the trees. Another visual from Highway 11 looking northwest. This is from one of the residential subdivisions across the street, Colonial Court. You can see the tower, the balloon there. If you keep going down, this is some more of the balloons, and then we'll get to the photo sims. If you keep going down, we did several views from the residential neighborhoods. If you keep going down. And I'm sorry I'm rushing this. I'm trying to keep within that 5 minutes. I'm sure I probably already exceeded it. That's a subdivision to the northwest of the tower site. Right, and then I think we should be getting to the photo sims pretty soon. All right, so this is looking directly at the site from Highway 11. As you can see, you only see the top of the tower. This is from Colonial Court, again, a neighborhood across the street. You will be able to see the top of the tree that will look very similar to the trees already there. Another subdivision across the street, again, you will be able to see the top of it that will look like a tree. From there, it's not visible. Again, you can kind of see the tree there at that residential view. This is at an intersection at Highway 11. And then this is the visibility map that we provided as well. So as the photo simulations show, the tower will be designed to resemble a pine tree. From the majority of the residential neighborhoods, just the top of the tree will be seen. The bottom of the tower will be screened from view from the existing topography and existing trees on the property. This will be an innocuous use. There's not going to be noise. There's not going to be an increase in traffic. After initial construction, there will only be maintenance on average 1 time per month with 1 employee. So it's not going to increase trips on that road. There's not going to be an odor. There's not going to be dust. There's not going to be vibration. So it will be very innocuous, and it will not be lit. And the final finding of fact for the board is that the use is suitable in terms of effects on highway traffic, parking, and safety, with adequate access arrangements to protect streets from undue congestion and hazards. As I just explained, it will not have a net increase on traffic after the construction period, which is roughly 45 days. There will be an access easement over the property owner's property to provide the 12-foot wide gravel access. For all of these reasons, the application meets the requirements of the Oconee County tower requirements as well as the special exception requirements, and I would respectfully request that the board grant the permit, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, as would Mary Pat Tyndall, who did the site acquisition and chose the property for the facility.
Are there any questions?
I have one. Ms. Good, you were mentioning about the co-location and how far you are away from the tower. Is the Walhalla Town, is that the nearest tower?
I believe it is the nearest tower. It's about 1.6 miles south of this tower.
Do you have any simulation? We've had before when we've had these come in, and it almost looks about like what you're showing there for the visibility map, but it shows actually how it would, the area that would be affected if this goes into, not visibility wise, but as far as service wise.
Oh,
That has a different, it's almost like a Doppler radar. It's red in some areas where it picks up the strength and then it kind of.
I do, and that was submitted as part of the application. I believe that was Exhibit 18A, but
And
I
from
can.
what we've got, honestly, it's black and white. I mean, if you don't have it, that's no problem. I just think
I may be
that
able to pull it up here, let me see.
if you can pull that up, I think that would be good to look at.
Sure.
Was it coverage map? Okay.
And again, this was
That's
part of the
perfect.
application.
Thank you.
Exactly, that's what thank you.
And the first page shows what it is before, and the second page shows what it is after. Green being you can get service inside a building. The yellowish orange being you get service in your car. Red, you're kind of standing on one foot, waving your arm out in the air to try to get service.
Any other questions?
Do you have any way of quantifying how many carriers will be affected and that live in that area as far as being able to have service at home or anything like that?
How many users?
Yeah.
I do not have that information. I can certainly request that information if that would be helpful for the board. But it would be obviously after this evening.
Also, the process of looking at other sites in the area, I haven't seen anything in my packet that
Okay.
shows the areas that were looked at.
Okay. All right. At this time, I'm going to call Mary Pat Tyndall to come and speak to you about that. But specifically, Exhibit 4 of the application showed the search area map, and Exhibit 7 was the inability to co-locate statement. And I'll just give you my copy so you can
Okay.
have a look at those.
I think I did have one more question for you before you go.
Okay, that's fine.
In the very front end of the communication tower ordinance.
Yes.
Number 3 is, as a tower, in a site pre-selected by the board as a recommended location based upon the county's countywide communication tower site study. It might be a question for you, or I don't know that I'm aware of a site study that has specific locations for towers. So being that that's a requirement, I just wanted to see how that worked with these.
I do not know, I can't answer that question either. I would have to do some research on that to help you out, to find out whether or not that is an active element in the process, because I have not seen it used.
Does that question did I word it where it's understandable what I'm asking, though, that it says
Yeah.
that we were supposed to have the sites pre-selected? So I just didn't know how that worked into the whole application process. So.
And I believe Mary Pat can speak to that. I honestly had several conversations with several different contacts with Oconee County because there was a bunch of turnover while we were preparing for this.
Right.
I'd have to go back through and look at my emails on that. I want to say that I discussed that with them, but I don't want to say something that's incorrect. But I can look back through my emails and see if I can find something to that effect.
Thank you.
And I will come and bring you, what I'm going to bring you is Exhibit 4, the search area map, Exhibit 7, the inability to co-locate statement, and Exhibit 8, the tower separation statement.
Mary Pat, if you could just state your name, please.
I'd be delighted. My name is Mary Pat Tyndall. I live in Gaffney, South Carolina. I've been doing real estate work in telecommunications for, I hate to say, 25 years, about 15 of that with Verizon in the South Carolina, Tennessee, and North Carolina areas. When I first get a search ring from Verizon, it comes to me over the computer. It involves a sheet of paper called a SARF, which is a radio frequency determination of things that I am to look for. It gives me the lats and longs of the search ring. It tells me the height that they need of the tower, a minimum, the desired rad, and then the lowest rad that they could accept in a certain search area. It tells me what kind of search ring it is, which means it's a capacity site, which means that I need to find something within the search ring if I possibly can. If not, then I go to the RF engineer and ask them if I have to move the ring based on the zoning and the parcels that I cannot find to accommodate a tower, which way do you want me to move? That way I save a lot of time and effort talking to people that own parcels around the search ring where it would not work for RF. I did come into the zoning department when I first got this ring. I've forgotten the gentleman's name that was here first. This was about 1.5 years ago or 2 years. I think there have been at least 2 changes since then. But I always sit down with the zoning person to find out what I should be looking for, to understand that I understand the zoning ordinance as to setbacks, the requirements, the heights allowed, the zoning designations, so that I know that if I look in a certain area, yes, a tower is permitted. So I did that with this gentleman. There was no mention whatsoever of any sites that the county preferred.
Okay.
I gave him the search ring, told him what I was looking for, and he sort of guided me as to what to do. As you see in this search ring, there are several sort of industrial areas like Coyo bearings. I first looked in with them. I called them. I sent them a letter. I got absolutely no response to my request to talk to them about a tower on their property. There's also an LLC out there called Cane Creek, which I wrote letters. I could not find a contact telephone number for them. Cane Creek is split in between the 2 parcels that they own by a floodplain, which is rather large. And we try to stay out of floodplains due to environmental issues. I also contacted private landowners around there on parcels that had the correct elevation, that were not in the floodplain, that I could actually put a communications tower within the parcel. So there were about 7 or 8 parcels that I tried contacting to get information about whether they'd be willing to talk to me about a tower for Verizon Wireless. The elevation, we lose from 40 to 60 feet in that search ring alone. So in order to make up for the loss in elevation, we would have to go well over 200 feet with a lighted tower to do that. I honestly try to stay away from that. I try to find elevations that keep a light off of the tower because I know that causes more problems than anything. People don't want to see strobe lights at night, so that was one of my concerns.
Mary Pat, in the interest of time, I'm
Yes, sir.
gathering what we're hearing is that, that there is need for a tower, and the need is there because there isn't proper coverage. The question is, where should the tower be? And it sounds like you're saying that you've done the due diligence in all the different places that the tower might be, and this is the best that you can come up with. Is
Yes,
that-
sir, thank you.
Okay.
That's very concise.
And rather than, just in the interest of time, I mean, is there anything in addition that you need to cover, or does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
I majored in English, I'm rather wordy.
Oh, you're
Is that-
very articulate. It's
Well,
just,
thank you very much, even though I'm from Gaffney, I realize that.
Are there any other questions to ask? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
for your time, appreciate it.
Okay, now we have staff comments. Is there anything that you'd like to say as a result of the communication we've just had from the applicant?
Not really, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Luss said, I don't have anything further concerning this study or site selection issue that may have been addressed some years ago. If the need is there for us to do that research, obviously it would require having to come back to you at a later time with it, but I don't have anything that has indicated to me that that's a major factor in this process, to be frank with you. Even though I agree with you, it's on the page. There it is.
I was just saying for a fact that
No,
we
you're
probably
right.
should take it out.
Yeah, it's there.
If it's not there.
We
so.
probably ought to take a second look at it, but if the answer is, if the question is that you need an answer on that at 9, I'm afraid I don't have one.
Okay. So now we're at the point of hearing the other side of the story in terms of any argument you have against the tower. And I understand, David, you want to start? Sure. Okay. So again, please introduce yourself at the mic.
Good evening. My name is David Skilf. I'm a longtime resident of Oconee County. Some of you here know me, some of you don't. I actually live in Main Street. I'm here partly on behalf of my father, Charles Skilf, whose property is adjacent to where this site location is going to be, and partly for myself, who frequents that particular residence. Before I get started, I've got 4 copies of one part that I'm going to go over. I'll give that to each of one of you. And if you just hold off on taking a look at that till I go over it.
Could we also get a copy of what each?
Yeah, that'll leave y'all with 3. I need one.
Did you get one? You want? I can look over here if you want to have this one.
How many did y'all get? I
I think
actually
we
have
need
one more if you want it.
at least one more. I need one here. Thank you. So even though you gave that to us, we're not supposed to look at it yet.
Well, I'm going to go over it,
Okay.
just so you can have it. The first point I was going to bring up was the site map that everybody got. I believe the letter went out to about 23 individuals, all of which looked at this particular map and said, hey, that's nowhere near where I live. That's a half a mile from the actual location of the map. So improper information has already been sent out regarding that. So
Say that again, I didn't follow what you.
the site map that was sent out to the 23 individuals whose parcels were adjacent to this particular location, looking at this map, anybody that lives in the area of the actual location would look at this map and say, Well, this doesn't affect me at all, because that location is well over half a mile from where I live. It's not directly across the street. And I believe she went over that, stating that that was the search zone, not where the actual location of the map was. I'd like to first read from South Carolina Code of Laws, Section 6-29-710. It's A4. To protect and preserve scenic, historic, or ecologically sensitive areas. Section 6, Chapter 29, Article 710 states, the purposes for local planning and zoning, item A4 requires the protection and preservation of scenic, historic, or ecologically sensitive areas. Highway 11 is designated as the Cherokee Foothills National Scenic Highway, and I believe it's the only one in Oconee County with such designation. Construction of a communication tower within a few hundred feet of Highway 11 doesn't protect this requirement, causes a distraction from Oconee County's natural beauty, which is something I believe the residents and members of the board would like to preserve. Now, I'm not suggesting that we can't have another tower somewhere near that area. I'm suggesting that that is not the best place for it. Thousands of people travel down Highway 11 every day. Nobody wants to look at that cell tower. Highway 11 is a very beautiful road to travel down, and I know they're trying to disguise it as a stealth tower. But frankly, in my opinion, it doesn't work. It is going to be well over, I believe it's 169 foot tall. I've heard 165, but the lightning rod extends that another 4 foot. So the tower itself is 169 foot. The surrounding trees at the base of that tower, not even 100. So that's going to be towering over all those trees, and very visible from driving south down Highway 11. The zoning enabling document in use by Oconee County was created under the provisions of Title VI, Chapter 29 of the South Carolina Code of Laws. This section states the purposes for local planning and zoning. I believe I've already gone over there. I apologize. On the county's website, the mission statement says, it's the mission of Oconee County to provide our current and future citizens and visitors quality services while protecting our communities, heritage, environment, and natural resources in an ever-changing world. This is followed by the vision statement that says, Oconee County, a diverse, growing, safe, vibrant community guided by rural traditions and shaped by natural beauty, where employment, education, and recreation offer a rich quality of life for all generations, both today and tomorrow. In using the coordinates for the proposed site after correcting for the longitude and after determining the coordinates for Mr. Dunnigan's residence and my father's residence and comparing this information with the balloon report provided by Gold, we've made the following observations. The distance between the two residences is 1,027 feet. So my parents' house to George Dunnigan's house, there's a distance of 1,027 feet. From the proposed tower site to the Dunnigan residence is 528 feet. From the proposed tower site to the Skelf residence is 502 foot. So it's actually closer to my parents' house than it is his. And if you were to walk out of my parents' back deck and look left, there it is, 169 foot tower. In using photo number 2 from the balloon report, which is not there, the tower appears to be located in a straight line path with Mr. Dunnigan's driveway, which that's true. That's where it's going to be. The tower would be about 470 foot from the Skelf residence and 557 foot from the Dunnigan residence. So I don't know where the tower is actually going. I think there is just a small bit of misinformation out there. Photos 17 and 18 from the balloon report clearly show the negative visual impact to southbound Highway 11 traffic. If you're familiar with Highway 11, this is just at the top of the hill where you reach Scenic Heights Baptist Church. It's a little bit before that area. But there it is. That's the balloon picture right there. 18 shows the same thing. How much higher it's going to be than the natural tree line that is already there. Now I'm going to read you something from y'all's website, the zoning enabling ordinance. This is section 38-7.1. This is for a variance, not for a special exception. It's 4B. In granting a variance, the board may attach to it such conditions regarding the location, character, or other features of the proposed building, structure, or use as the board may consider advisable to protect established property values in the surrounding area, or to promote the public health, safety, or general welfare. Now, I read you that to tell you that we have spoken with real estate agents in this area, and it is definitely a negative impact on property values, as much as 20 to 25%. There is some conflicting information out there, but this comes from a real estate agent in this particular area who has dealt with the same issue not long ago. There was a 20 to 25% decrease in property values for the surrounding area. On to section 38-7.2, special exceptions. Item number 2 and 3. In the best interest of the county, the convenience of the community, and the public welfare. Suitable for the property in question and designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be in harmony with and appropriate in appearance to the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. I personally don't think that it meets that requirement. Therefore, I don't think a special exception should be granted. I move on to my last bit of information. This is a letter that my father has written. In his stead, he's sorry he couldn't be here. He had a family trip that has been planned in advance. But I'm going to read it. To Oconee County Community Development Staff, I, Charles Skelf, recently received a notice of public hearing from the Board of Zoning Appeals. This zoning appeal is for special exception regarding the construction of a cell tower structure, string beam, at 615 North Highway 11, adjacent to my property at 967 North Highway 11. I will be out of town and unable to attend the hearing on October 23rd. I respectfully request that my objections be appropriately read and heard at the hearing and given consideration by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The plan for this project, prepared by Kimley Horn, is dated April 4th, 2017, and a one-week notice to gather facts and to understand the impact to myself is an insufficient amount of time to assemble a credible opposition. However, in order to submit my concerns to oppose this project, I submit the following issues in no particular order of precedence. I purchased my property in 1995, in part based on zoning for the area. I did not anticipate that a commercial device that could affect my health, the health of my family, my neighbors, our pets, and wildlife would encroach upon the zoning restrictions that protected me. The tower would stand significantly higher than the existing trees and be an eyesore for myself and the Vaughns year-round, and for my neighbors during the fall and winter months. There were several photos that she showed you of the gold balloon test. A lot of those photos showed that you couldn't see the balloon. Well, you know, the leaves are still on the trees. During the winter months, some of those photos are going to be visible. So there is going to be more impact than what was shown. There are many good reasons for zoning ordinances, and one reason in particular is to ensure that land values are maintained for the residents of Oconee County. This project, if approved, would lower the value of my property by as much as 20 to 25% or more, and reduce the property values for this community. Properties closest to a cell tower installation are affected most. I talked with a local realtor in Walhalla about this, and they agreed with the projected diminution percentage based on the distance between my home and the tower, and their actual experience at a different location. In a 2014 study by the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy showed that 94% of respondents indicated that a cell tower in their neighborhood would impact their interest in a property and the price they ultimately would pay for it. In reviewing the information, the GPS coordinates listed for the site would locate the tower in China near Tibet. If this were the case, I wouldn't have any concerns, but I believe their longitude should have been a negative value, which is true. Lowered land values and health effects resulting from cell towers are discussed in many publications and should have been included with the zoning appeal notice. In doing so, a full disclosure of the impact would have been made to affected residents, and I believe more residents would have been encouraged to attend the hearing to understand the full impact of this project. It is my opinion that all the information should be available and put on the table for discussion. It therefore becomes the responsibility of the residents to ask that this information be made available, and that the Board of Zoning performs due diligence to the residents of Oconee County before providing their approval for this seemingly eminent domain process. My trust is with Oconee County Board of Zoning Appeals, not Verizon. I don't get a vote, just an opportunity to express my opinion. There are many studies that substantiate the health effects of RF energy and EMF energy radiation. Several members of my immediate family have developed varying forms of cancer and have died because of their proximity to high-voltage power lines. The studies to date are not conclusive, but in my opinion, there are negative consequences from this radiation regardless of the frequency, admittedly or not. A 2014 study by the American International Health Alliance discusses the interaction of RF radiation with matter and its biological effect on humans. My concerns about this are greater because of my proximity to the tower, and it should be a concern to Mr. Dunnigan as well if he isn't aware. It isn't clear from the information I have if this project is in compliance with all the requirements by OSHA, EPA, FCC, or other agencies. But the EPA has indicated that at high levels, RF energy is dangerous, and I'm unaware of the cumulative effect from other sources of radiation within the immediate area. There are many issues raised in this letter, and none that I'm uniquely qualified to provide a correct answer for. However, I am qualified to offer my opinion that only having 1 week for consideration for this project was unfair, and all the facts concerning this project, diminution, health, zoning, codes, etc., were not provided with the public hearing notice so that residents could become as prepared citizens. My only hope is that the people on the Board of Zoning Appeals perform their duties in a due diligent manner and makes an informed decision before awarding their stamp of approval. It is for these reasons and more that I strongly oppose this project and urge the Oconee County Development staff to withhold approval for the special exception regarding the construction of string beam. And I think what I read to you about A4 being, you have to comply with scenic requirements, and Highway 11 being a scenic highway, the only one in Oconee County, I don't think it meets that requirement. I'm not saying we couldn't use another tower somewhere else, but that's just not the site for it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, the second person to speak, I guess, would be Laura Gooley, is it?
That's me.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, before you.
oh, okay, that was on, I'm sorry, okay.
Before you go on, Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I interject one item, because I'm afraid we might get past it and not
Sure.
get back to it? The reference to potential health impacts regarding such facilities is that is not something you can consider.
Right.
That's been made clear by FCC, by 1996 Federal Communications Act, and that essentially prohibits regulations or denial of tower permits based on generic environmental and health issues. That's basically the way it states it. So my first impression would be that, barring any specific data to bring to the table, that's not an area that the board is empowered to consider.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
wanted to-
Okay, sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to, because you're actually to come up after everybody speaks, then we'll give you a chance for rebuttal, is that okay?
Sure, I was going to see if I could just I know this is a public hearing and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. As Verizon's attorney, there are a couple of evidentiary objections I feel I need to make on the record, not rebuttal per se to what has been said, but just objections. But if you want me to hold those until my rebuttal period, I'd be happy to do so.
I'd prefer that you did hold them,
Okay.
because there'll probably be more as you come along.
Sure, okay.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, I guess Kava, is it? Kava Cochran?
Oh, I'm with Baker Donaldson.
Pardon me?
I'm with Baker Donaldson as well.
Oh, okay. I'm not paying attention that way. Okay, Joe Ruckett?
That's a login sheet, say that you're here, that you're working on.
So you are here?
I'm here.
Good job, okay.
For speakers?
Then we have Mevi Binder?
That would be me.
And you're just saying you're her also?
I'm Ava Bender, yes, I'm here. I was going to speak, but David Scalf did a most excellent job. I completely agree with him. And I do want to say, though, that...
If you're going to say much more, if I could ask you to come to the podium.
I do want to say that my property is adjacent to this proposed tower, and that we were given so little time and so little information, and it's impossible. I came up and spoke with Mr. Huggins, and I have done all the research I could do. I'm not a scientist, and there's not enough time with other things that we have to do with our daily life to be able to fully, investigate this whole situation. We got enough problems in our area. We got a contaminated creek. That was another corporation, and now we want to put a cell tower that's going to be ugly as, the cell tower would be disguised perhaps a little bit part of the year, but about 6 months of the year, there's no leaves on the trees. We're going to see it. And, we're not allowed to say anything about health, but I just totally disagree with that, according to what I've read, that that kind of radiation, non-ionic radiation, can cause harm to the skin. And so we don't know what kind of side effects or ultimately will be had. There's a school in the proximity, and in our immediate neighborhood there are a lot of children. I could say a million things, but I want my daughter and Virginia to have time, so you've heard me, and I sent you a 2-page email early this morning, okay?
Yes, got it. Thank
Please
you.
read it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask staff a question, please?
Sure.
Because if the answer to this question may wrap this whole thing up very quickly.
Okay.
Was proper notice given of this? Because I've heard now a couple of times that maybe not enough notification was given. And if that's the case, then I think we're probably done here.
Well, required notification.
Yes, and I know I might think that I need to have 3 weeks, and you might think I need to have, was the required notification by sign and by notification, I think by letter, and I think also in paper, is that
Yes,
correct?
Yes.
Those were made in time?
Yes, sir. Now, the one thing I would agree with, that's been mentioned here that was, could be considered an error in terms of the appearance of it to someone looking at the mapping, was that when those who received the notice in the mail, based on our 250-foot radius provision, we basically use 250 feet as a radius around the site to send letters out to those who are within that range. The photo that was shown there did show the optimum site, not the actual site. And I can understand where that would have caused confusion. On the other hand, the notice also specifically stated the address of the site, the actual site, tax parcel ID number, and the owners of the site where it would be located. So I can see the confusion created by it, but the notice also did specifically state where it would be located. So that would be the one thing that I would say would cause some people to question location, but as far as the actual notification, those things were done.
And I might be putting you on the spot here. Do you have any idea how that moving that optimum from the optimum location to the actual location, how many people that affected that with that radius?
That did not affect who got notified.
Okay.
Be notified based on the radius from the site where it is proposed to be located.
Okay.
We didn't use the radius around the ideal optimum.
Okay. So bottom line is notification, required notification as set forth by our law was met.
Yes, sir, and I think we have something, 21 or 2, I'm not sure how many letters that went out. We may have done a little, we may have sent more than we actually were required to do based on the standard. I'm not absolutely certain on that, but if you need that information. If the discussion continues past tonight, then we can certainly kind of dig up some additional specifics on that if you require.
No, that's fine. I just
think
wanted.
the key thing that was confusing residents, which is understandable, was that photograph that they saw in that.
Thank you. I just wanted that clarification before we proceeded.
Okay, thank you. Good point. Okay, so Christina?
live at 320.
If you could wait to get to the microphone.
I am. I live at 320 Bender Ridge Road, directly adjacent to my mom, Mava Bender. I did not receive a notice of the zoning hearing. I have two objections to the cell tower. One is the visual aesthetics. I would say that conducting the visual studies in August, when the trees are in full foliage, is extremely misleading as to what the visual impact will be. I live much further from Highway 11 than this proposed tower, and during most of the year, you cannot see my home. My neighbors cannot see my home. But when the leaves fall, you can see my house from Highway 11, which tells me that that tower is going to stick out like a sore thumb. It's going to be very visually displeasing to everyone around it. That would be my first argument. I think that if you were going to really look at the impact, you need to go back in about 2 months and reconduct that study and show it to the council and show what it looks like in the winter. My second is that I'm a Verizon customer. I have no cellular reception problems. I have no difficulty with my wireless. So I live right in that area. I've never had a problem. So I don't think that you can say that it's a specific service need either. But I would really like to see the visual studies reconducted 2 months from now. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, Virginia? Vaughn, is it?
Vaughn.
Good evening, my name is Virginia Vaughn. I live at 1125 North Highway 11. My bottom field is connected to the Dunnigan's bottom field, and on the top part of the property, I'm right on the other side of the Skelf residence. So it goes Dunnigan residence, Skelf residence, and then my property. I'm on what is formerly known by many people as the Old Goat Farm, or a portion of the Old Goat Farm. Apparently, there's some truth to that. First, for the record, being an old goat. For the record, I would like to verify that the council has received and had an opportunity to read the notifications or documents sent by my neighbor Danny and Wanda Knight. They were unable to be here and they sent documentation. I'd like to make sure that that was received.
Yes.
Thank you. And that you received an email from Dave and Deb Miller, and that that has been read and received. Thank you, I appreciate that. I hereby vehemently oppose the proposed construction of the above-mentioned cell tower for several reasons. First, the Oconee County website states, and I quote, "Oconee County is committed to openness and transparency." Now, this is with reference to our finances, but it certainly applies to the county as a whole. And yet this community was given approximately 1 week's notice regarding this hearing. You asked if proper notice was given. I don't know what proper notice is. When I looked at the laws, for a change in zoning, the requirement is 15 days. None of us received 15 days notice, but that is for a change in zoning, and I realize this is not a change in zoning, this is a special exception. So based on my review of Oconee County's website and code, I don't know what proper notice was. I did receive a letter in the mail 8 days before this hearing. This does not give us as community members sufficient time to process, research, or form persuasive arguments for or against this project. The construction of this tower will have lasting effects on the community, and to rush this project through with so little community input is unfair, unjust, and blatantly in conflict with the county's stated goal of openness and transparency. My second objection is that there is significant data to indicate that we as surrounding neighbors will suffer a significant decline in property value as a result of this tower construction. I wish I could give you more facts and figures, but as noted above, we have had only a short period of time, 1 week, to adequately research this issue. Some of the research that I have found indicates a 20% decline in property value. Again, I have not reviewed all of the literature, but there's a whole ton out there. Cellco and Verizon has had literally months to prepare their argument in favor of this construction, and we have been given a small fraction of that time to argue for the safety and financial security of our homes. Fairness would dictate that at the very least this item is tabled until the affected community members have time to adequately research the issues related to this application. Third, this one's not going to go over well with Mr. Huggins. There is enough data to indicate that health issues are a legitimate concern, and I understand that the FCC and all of its medical wisdom has regulated this line of protest away. However, as a community-focused group, we would hope that the Board of Zoning Appeals would not discount our concerns out of hand simply because of an arbitrary and potentially incorrect FCC ruling. Okay, some of the other stuff David already covered. With reference to Oconee Code 38-7.2, where you list the things that must be met, you can only give a special exception if comprehensive plan, best interests of the county, in harmony with and appropriate to the appearance of the existing or intended character of the general facility. It also states that the developer has the burden of providing evidence to the county of the general requirements. Verizon's claim that the construction of this tower in their application in our residential neighborhood will bring jobs to Oconee County is laughable and is certainly not supported by even a scintilla of evidence. We as the community directly impacted by this construction strongly disagree that it is in the best interest of our county or the public welfare. We as community members who will be looking at this tower, interrupting our previously unobstructed views, most certainly disagree that it is in harmony with and appropriate to the intended character of the vicinity. The developer has provided no actual evidence that we have heard regarding the public welfare and the appropriateness of placing this tower in our neighborhood. They have simply issued statements that it is so. Again, we have had so little time to review this proposal that we should, at a minimum, be afforded the opportunity to have more time to develop our positions. My last point is petty, but hey, I'm up here. The application contains conflicting responses, to wit on page 15 of their application. It is stated that because the property is not located in a residential district, Code Section 3810-7 is not applicable. However, on page 16, they state that because the property is in a residential district, that relevant standard does not apply. Although I believe that all of us who live in this area would consider ourselves as residing in a residential area, I realize that Oconee zoning regulations are determinative, not our perceptions of our properties as our homes and the center of our focal family lives. Considering how long Verizon has had to work on this application, I must question if they cannot determine whether or not we are actually in a residential district. Perhaps they need a little more time to work on this as well. So I ask you, please, as members of the Board of Zoning Appeal, to genuinely and thoroughly consider the impact of this proposal. Take into account the views and opinions of the residents of the affected areas, and please protect the interests and constitutional rights of due process of the citizens of Oconee County, and not just the desires of an out-of-state megacorporation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Mary Pat Tundle. Oh, okay. Do you want to speak on the, against it as well, or not?
No.
Here's the opportunity. Then we have Mary Dunnigan.
Property owner.
Okay, do you want to speak?
No.
Or you're just saying you're here,
We're
right?
here.
Okay. Then that's a signature. Liz, can you see that, what that says? Something Thompson, is it?
From 615 North Highway 11.
I can't read the,
George Dunning.
Yes, George.
How about that?
That's done again? Wow. Okay, then, is that Debbie?
Yeah, I think he's gonna speak. George gonna speak.
George, 90 and
Okay, so you're gonna
615 North
speak. Okay,
Highway
I'm
11.
sorry.
Sir?
I'm sorry, I was just making fun of your
Okay.
handwriting. You're worse than mine.
I would say that several times my phone in the battery usage would be excessive on certain days when I haven't been off the property. And in looking on the phone to see why it would give a low signal as a reason the battery was used up. So I would question whether, some days I've got good signal, some days I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I guess we're at Debbie. Okay. And then the last person is, is it Gretchen? Do you take handwriting from George?
No, it's Gretchen Maselli, but I just signed in because they said I had to sign in.
Okay. All right, everybody has signed in, and everybody has talked that wanted to talk. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, could I say something?
sure.
He's going to sleep. Mr. Chairman, my name is Jim Codner. I'm just an interested observer of the process here. I've been to many voter zoning appeals meetings in the past. Notification has been an issue in the past. Mr. McKee, I think, was on the board back when we did the Stamp Creek approval, must be 3 years ago. Notification there was done according to the standards, but it really only went to a few people and really did not go to the kinds of people who would be affected by the view area. And it was really a big issue at the time. Coming out of that, the Board of Zoning Appeals said, hey, we recommend you expand the area for putting out letters, and it had to do, at the time, also had to do with requiring a balloon test, that kind of thing. And some of that was incorporated, but the notification requirements, representatives from BZA worked with the planners at the time, pulled together a recommended change to standards, went to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission accepted those as part of an overall change in their requirements. Planning Commission members changed before the requirements were actually incorporated into law, and the new Planning Commission members said, we don't need that, particularly at the request of the existing planner. They said, hey, we'll do a better job. We'll notify people as required to make sure everyone gets a good notification. It may require more than the minimum number of parcels around the requesting parcel, that kind of thing. And we'll post signs wherever we need to post signs. That was a big issue with Stamp Creek. Signs just were not adequate. Well, it went back. The existing planners at the time said, hey, we don't need to do all that. We'll do the best we can, and we'll get it done properly. But there's nothing really specific in the standards now which really give you good notification. And so I'd recommend that Mr. Huggins look at that. Perhaps you want to have an input on that. Unfortunately, you don't have anything to do with writing the standards. You can raise your hand and say, hey, something needs to be done because of what we're hearing from the public, but it's the Planning Commission that actually has to pass on those standards, which eventually go to council for approval. So that's an issue. I'd commend you to look at it again because of what I hear these folks saying. It's imperative that folks have proper notification in order to deal with something that's not in their wheelhouse. They're not used to dealing with this kind of stuff. And it's really an important kind of thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just following up on what Mr. Codner said, that it is very true that if you really look at our codes and you look at our standards, you look at our rules of procedure, there's nothing there. It doesn't say what the radius ought to be. It doesn't say when you actually notify folks. This was based on, as Mr. Codner explained, some negotiating and some discussions that had occurred, but I can't find any evidence that it was ever codified. So we work based on what was.
I understand. And my objections at the time were, hey, what happens when you're not here and we got new people? Well, we've gone through 2 new people, and they just don't. have not been exposed to this issue in the past. And I'm not finding fault with Mr. Huggins. I'm not, really not. I'm finding fault with the standard.
I actually
And the
think
standard ought to be reviewed again, and with the new planning commission, maybe get something done that is a little more prescribing.
Staff fully approves of that position.
Okay, good.
We
At the
would
time,
like
we
to
said
have
half
that
a mile.
direction and how to manage that.
What was recommended at the time was half a mile from the property.
Yeah.
Now, you're nowhere near that now.
No.
And I'm not sure that's required, but, and there were also a lot more signs required. So,
Okay, I think point made, and it's good,
Thank
good
you.
point, good point.
Can I speak once more before?
Sure.
I agree with everything that you said.
Who's
Proper
he?
notification is an issue. However, I would like to state that given proper notification, none of these views would change. We wouldn't all of a sudden say, hey, okay, well, I'm good now. We want a cell tower right there. Am I right? Okay. And you did inform the proper number of people. I think the radius was 250 feet from the property. I think you notified the proper amount of people. Proper notification wasn't made if you're going by Ms. Vaughn's, what she found of 15 days. But that's not going to change Ms. Vaughn's view on the matter. That's not going to change my view on the matter, nor is it going to change my parents'. You know, I also don't want this to get extended out a year, 6 months, 8 months. The fact of the matter is, whoever you send a letter to is not going to want that tower there. It is visually obstructing from the beauty of scenic Highway 11. Everybody loves driving down Highway 11. It's a great drive, especially the further up north you go. I drive down Highway 11 every day on my way to work. I don't want to see the tower. Nobody here does. And I just wanted to say that, you know, regardless of however many people you sent this letter to, you're going to get the same views from everybody. Okay. Nobody's going to say, oh, yeah, put that tower there. As far as service, Mr. Gunnigan may have had some issues, but I grew up less than 1,000 foot from where he lives. Never had any issues. So, you know, I think Mr. Lusk's question before we started about how many people will this actually affect, I would say the answer is very minimal. I don't know the range of this particular tower. Do you know offhand?
I'm sorry?
Do you know the signal range of this particular tower? Just,
I don't know, it's shown in that, in the.
I mean, are we talking
maps.
like maybe a mile, 5 miles, 10 miles? Do we know?
At least a mile right now.
Normal coverage is about 3 miles.
Normal coverage is about, so we're talking about all of Walhalla?
Well, its purpose is to offload an existing tower. It's not a
Okay.
tower that is specifically put there to have coverage. It's
Okay,
different.
so it's not a coverage tower. It is to offload some of the power that we have at the Walhalla
But
location.
it does also provide coverage, but that's not its whole purpose.
Okay, so it's to offload power consumption from another tower that's located 1.6 miles south, essentially. If we're talking about a 1 mile zone, that is not a lot of people. I mean,
While we're on that particular topic, when you said it's to offload the tower, so is another option to build a bigger, better tower in Walhalla and not have this tower? Is that an option?
Just, sorry, I wanted to come up to the podium to speak. No, so that's not an option. And I want to clarify, it's not a power offload, it's a capacity offload. So again, the Verizon customers in Walhalla, at the existing Walhalla Town Tower site, the residents that it's served by, they are exceeding that tower's capacity to serve them by using their mobile devices, namely, most likely, their internet usage, the data usage. Recently, Verizon switched over, as all major carriers did, to their unlimited data plans. With that change, you're going to see more facilities needed to densify the network and provide these quote, capacity offloads because the existing cell phone towers, they just can't handle all the demand for the customers. And so that's the purpose of this tower.
If we could just, are you finished?
No.
Did you have more to say?
Sure.
Then we can make. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's
two
fine.
people at the podium.
I think what she said makes sense. It's a power offload.
Capacity.
It's a capacity issue. The population of Walhalla has not changed very much in the past several years. You would think that a company like Verizon would be able to, come in and retroactively change something on that tower to give it more capabilities. They have the money to do so. I know they have the smarts to be able to do it, as opposed to putting in a new tower somewhere else. I personally don't think it's going to affect that many people. Walhalla's 5,000 people. West Union, the city I live in, 300 people. The numbers might be skewed a little bit. Okay, 320. I apologize. And I'm on council, and I didn't know. The majority of people in this area have proper cell coverage. The people that I've spoken with that don't have proper cell coverage are the people who live in the mountains. And that's not where they're proposing this tower goes. They're proposing that it goes in our backyard, my parents' backyard, everybody that drives down Highway 11's backyard. Nobody wants to see that tower there.
Okay, can we, time?
Sure. My time up? Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I think we've made our
We're
point.
giving you 2 opportunities.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Laura, it's time for your opportunity to do rebuttal, I guess, from the applicant.
Thank you. The first point I want to address is the concerns about impacts to property values. I understand that concern. That's a question that comes up in all of our hearings that we attend. The first thing I want to say is, again, I'm going to make some objections just as Verizon's attorney, and that's not meaning any disrespect to these people that came and said their piece. That's what this whole process is about. It's just to protect Verizon's legal rights on the record. To the extent that there were statements made about speaking to a real estate agent that is not here to be cross-examined or to give expert testimony, I would object to that as being hearsay. They're not here. I can't see what data they've used. I haven't had the chance to question them. And so I would object to that being inadmissible testimony under hearsay. Also, I would say that in terms of impacts to property value, there's not been any evidence put into the record that says that there will be an impact to property value. There's been no data analysis put into the record, so anything else is just speculation. A variance provision of this ordinance was cited with language about impact to property values. Again, I just wanted to remind the board this isn't a variance application. There's no similar standard for special exceptions. I went through the findings of fact for the board for a special exception, and there's no burden to prove no negative impact to property values. However, I would bring the board's attention to a case out of Delaware. Now, stay with me. I know it's not South Carolina law, but the reason I bring this to your attention, it was AT&T versus Sussex County Board of Adjustment, and this is a 2015 case, and they squarely looked at the issue of impact to property values from cell phone towers, because this is a very common concern. And in that case, AT&T had a cell phone tower special exception permit approved. That decision was appealed, and it went on a long appeal process for approximately 3 years. In that 3-year period, AT&T was able to erect a temporary tower of the same height at that property location while the appeal was going on. Once it got back to the 3rd hearing, they had been able to study the impact to property values for that temporary tower over the 3-year period of time and determined that there was no impact to those property values from that erection of that temporary tower. So that case just goes to show that echoes the evidence that we've had from previous real estate impact studies we've had for other sites that have found that there's not been any impact to property values. And again, that was just not a standard for consideration, but I did want to address that point. In terms of the impact, visual impact, this is a technology that's needed. It's needed for people who are in wireless-only households. It's needed for the public safety considerations of people trying to reach emergency services when they're in their homes, but also on the road when they have a car accident. Emergency services can co-locate their equipment on this tower. It is a public benefit, and this is a line-of-sight technology. There's no way to make it invisible. It's going to be seen. But the evidence in the record shows that Verizon is doing the best it can to conceal this technology. It is siting it on a 25-acre property, 370 feet plus off of the scenic highway in existing trees that will be maintained around the perimeter of the facility. It will be designed to look like a monopine or a tree. Now, is it going to be visible from people's properties? Yes, it's not going to be invisible. But to the best extent possible, we have made it in harmony with the area to service the population that it is intended to service. In terms of differing people's perspectives on cell phone coverage, I would just point the board to Verizon Wireless's engineer statement, which was Exhibit 3 of the application, that stated the need for this tower. They would not be spending the time and the money on this tower if it was not required to increase the service in this area from a capacity standpoint. In terms of population staying the same, your population can stay the same, but people are going to smartphones, right? We used to just have regular cell phones that just had calls. Then we went to text. Now most people have smartphones, and that's just using more data and changing the use. So it's not necessarily about an increased population. In terms about health effects, again, I respect their position on it, but would remind the board of federal law 47 USC section 332 that squarely states that so long as the operating equipment is in line with federal regulations, local boards cannot determine placement of facilities based on concerns about general health effects. And that was evidenced by Exhibit 10 of the application that showed that the power levels will be well below those FCC standards. In terms of the whether it's in a residential section, I looked back at my application. It looks like it did have a typo. It did mean to say it's not in a residential section and why those residential service area, because it's in the control-free district. It's not a residential district per zoning. And in terms of the visual impact analysis, that was not done to mislead. It was just simply we did it before we filed the application, and that was the time of year we did it. I would summarize by just saying overall, I think there would be something, if I thought that backing up and meeting with the community to address their concerns would change their views, or if getting impact analysis on real estate property values would change their views, I think they're still going to say, well, I found this study. I still think it's going to negatively impact my property. I still don't want it to be near me. And so for those reasons, there's things I feel like we could do, but I don't know that it would change ultimately on their opinions on that. So for all of those reasons, we again respectfully request approval. Would be willing to discuss ideas that the board has if they feel like they want other evidence. But again, if it wouldn't change the ultimate outcome, we would respectfully request that the board approve the application.
Okay, questions from the board? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to compliment the lady that spoke last in the audience. She was very eloquent and said her mind, spoke her mind very well. And the gentleman that spoke twice, okay? I would be concerned primarily, although there was a good counter argument against property values. But I think everybody is reaching for those small examples instead of something that would really say, we looked at this situation and the following cases, we did have an effect on property values. Whether it's 20% or 15% or 10% or what, I don't know. But I would be concerned with that. Everybody seems to have that idea. So if that's not a valid concern, I'd like for it to be put to bed somehow. That's the only real thing I have to concern myself with is property values.
Okay, thank you.
And if that is a major concern of the board, if that's holding you up, if that's like your main concern, I mean, we certainly could go back and get more evidence to present on that.
Are there any other questions from the board members?
Do you have an answer to the historic claim towards the Highway 11 area? Have you addressed that in any way, or have you researched that at all?
Sure. Thank you for reminding me. I was trying to stay within my time limit. So in terms of impact to historic properties, this tower is licensed by the FCC. It has to go through its NEPA review process, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. One of the things that they look at is impact to historic properties and historic structures, scenic viewpoints as well. That is in the process of being completed. They will give out notice to state historic preservation societies, things of that nature for comment. We cannot get approval from the federal government to build this site if they come back saying there's a negative impact. I believe we are almost finished with that process, and we have not seen anything yet that would indicate a negative impact to any historic resources. I did reach out to our environmental folks who are performing that study, and they said that there's no historic properties or resources that they're aware of within 2,000 feet of this tower. I have that email documentation if you would like it, but I believe the ordinance requirement is 250 feet from those resources, and we're well outside of 250 feet from any historic resources.
So if we do decide to do this, we need, I know we have conditions that we're going to have to make because we don't have a structural engineer drawing. We don't have that, again, if we don't have that, we can go ahead and approve it with that condition. So that would be another condition we would have to add.
Correct.
Is that the NEPA report has to come back positive, and I know staff would be looking at that. They would catch that right off the bat.
Sure, and we would be happy to submit that as a condition of our approval in the building permit. Before we could get a building permit, we would be happy to submit that because we can't construct until we have that.
In your presentations, I mean, the message I get is that the tower is absolutely needed to provide the level of service that you're going to, and whether that tower is here or 5 feet over here or 20 feet over here, it's the same impact on the community. They're still going to see the tower. But I kind of wonder if the real issue is that the tower in Walhalla, it doesn't have enough capacity. Can you put a second tower there? I mean, can you do something in that tower to avoid having that tower in their neighborhood? But otherwise, it sounds like I don't know what to say. I mean, it sounds like it's a necessity for service.
So I won't pretend to be an RF engineer or a radio frequency engineer. Again, I would point to the network objective that was provided by the engineer testifying that there's a need for this tower. In terms of the existing tower, they do routinely modify their equipment on those towers to keep up with the changes in technology. That's always something that they're doing, but that alone will not remedy the situation. And putting another tower directly adjacent to one tower, it would violate this ordinance because you've got to have 1,300 feet between towers. But secondly, they cannot be too close together or they'll create interference. They have to be certain spaces away, and again, that's more of a technical engineering thing but that's kind of the overall explanation. Does that help answer your question?
Yes.
Can I add to that question, though?
Sure.
Kind of on the same note. How close does it have to be to the other tower, I guess is the question. Because the line, the circle that's drawn is dead center and the only red light in West Union. So it makes me think that we just wanted to put it in West Union somewhere to kind of have a second tower, at least the original circle of interest, right? Is that what that circle is?
Okay, so I want to make sure we're all on the same page. All right, do you see the 3 yellow triangles with Walhalla Town down at the bottom of that page?
I do.
That's the existing Verizon Wireless.
Okay.
Well, we're located on it. I don't know who owns the tower, but we're located on it. The red, it's not a circle, kind of polygon to the north, that's the original search area.
Okay.
I cannot speak to how far apart they have to be. All I can speak to is this is the search area map that the RF engineer for Verizon Wireless gave to Mary Pat and said, we need to look in this area. The tower has to be located in this area or as close there to in order to provide the capacity offload. Now, that's the information that I have, and that's reflected in the search area map and the network objective statement. In terms of the specifics of how far apart and what calculations went into it, I'd have to defer to an engineer, and if that's something that you feel you need to make your decision, we can certainly try to bring someone to address that more specifically.
I just had the, if it's not a coverage issue and there's not a proximity that it has to be in the other tower, then I think that opens up a pretty large area if it is a concern.
I will say that the red line showing the search area, we are outside of it, and that for the reasons that Mary Pat spoke to earlier. But that indicates the optimal area. That yellow pin that says stream bean, that's the center, saying, okay, that would be the best place. The further you get outside of that search area, the less ability you have to provide that capacity offload. So the further out you get in either direction, it's not going to provide as optimum of an offload. We tried to get this site as close to that area as possible, considering the flood zones and property owners who would respond to our requests.
But you don't know that fully, because your RF engineer is not present.
I'm just summarizing what's in the record from their statement from this, from the search area map. I haven't testified to specifics.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes, sir. If you would come to the podium.
My name is Joe Rucat, and my question is, if that's a radius, and that's one quadrant, why can't we put the antenna in any of the other three quadrants, like the lower part of 11? Why does it have to go towards Walhalla High? What's the reason for that location? Do you see what I'm getting at? If you're going to offload an antenna and you're dealing with a radius, you have 4 quadrants. We're only talking about one of them. Remember your XY coordinates in geometry? Your tower that we're talking about is in the middle, and we're trying to put one in the upper right-hand corner. Why? I guess the question is why that corner of our county when we could have it in other locations?
Could I kind of just say something, I guess, to the group? I mean, I'm feeling a couple of things here. One of the things I'm feeling is that there's still a lot of questions and dialogue that maybe should have happened before this meeting and maybe still should happen before anybody reaches a decision. I'm not sure whether we're ready for that or not, but I'm wondering, I mean, would people speak to the fact, is it worthwhile on both sides to spend more time together to discuss this, to alleviate some concerns, to look at different options if there are, or to just realize that it is what it is and we got to bite our teeth and you just got to do it? I don't know. But is it anybody's opinion that it would be worthwhile to do that, or is it your opinion that now let's vote and let's get on with it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think the statement has already been made that nothing would change the opinions here. And that came from, I think, the gentleman over there, yes.
That's true.
That nothing would change. So I'll be honest with you, and I'll just go ahead and summarize my feelings. The biggest problem, and I've served on this for so long, I swear I feel like I'm on the Supreme Court. I have to die to get off of this, to get off of this committee. But I'll say this, ever since I've been on here, it always comes down to the same thing, no matter what we're on. You have, and it all goes to the part of the variance that we have to look at about the best interests of the county, the convenience of the community, and the public welfare. And those always butt up against the fact that I want all the bad people to go to jail. And I want there to be a jail, but I don't want it in my backyard. I want it in your backyard, or I want it in his backyard or her backyard. I want the convenience, and I want the things that I feel like I need, but I don't want to infringe on me. And what we always run into, and this is the hardest part of serving on this committee, is it's always you have to balance as I just said, the community against a lot of times the individuals, and that's the hardest part of it. And I really believe even if we kick this can down the road and say we're going to look at it again next month or the next month, or we're going to notify a 50-mile radius around this, it's still gonna be when those people come in and say, oh, it's over in their neighborhood, I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about them because it's not in my neighborhood, so I'm in good shape. And I think that we just really, to me, that's what it always comes down to, is what the sacrifice that we're asking these folks to make in their aesthetics, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm certainly not going to address the health issue, but in the aesthetics, is it worth what the rest of the county is going to get? Because I think we have to look at it from a countywide perspective, not a Walhalla or a Seneca or a West Union or whatever, but from a countywide perspective, is what we're going. Some of y'all remember Barry Nichols sat on this committee longer than I was. And every time one of these cell towers came up, he would always say, how many of these things are we going to have to put up? And it seems like they're getting to be more and more and more and more of them. We voted one in about 3 months ago or 4 months ago, right down below my house, down near Crossroads. My signal service hadn't improved any. I don't know if it's up yet. It may not even be built yet. I hadn't been by there at Stone Pond to see if it's up yet. But if it has, it hadn't helped me at all. But my point is, at some point, and I hope that the Planning Commission at some point will take this off of our laps and sit there and they'll just man up and say, here's the deal on cell towers, because they're going to keep being more and more. I agree totally with what you said. We've gone to unlimited data now and all this stuff. And so it's only going to increase. Everybody's got a cell phone now. Everybody just about's got a smartphone. They're on it all the time. So I think that in my opinion, I'm just saying in my opinion, I think we need to go ahead and move on this thing. I really believe that if we say we're going to hold 20 more, community meetings, I think you're still going to have the same folks that are most impacted by this, that live around it, are going to say no, and the people that don't live around it are going to say, yeah, I want to be able to get 4LT or whatever it is, service. So that's just my opinion as far as if we delay it or not. Like I said, that's always the toughest part of this. Very seldom do we have anything come in that everybody here says, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Everybody's in favor for it. We're all going to be rich and everything's going to be wonderful. It always comes down to you've just got to weigh that option.
What's the rest of the board's opinion? What do you have to say on that?
I'm ready to vote.
You ready to vote? Okay. So, I guess the next thing we need to vote is, are we going to vote on each one of the criteria individually or do them as a group? Does anybody have an opinion on that?
I think the recommendation is usually to do them individually, but we can do whatever you guys want. At least I've seen recently, especially with something like this. I think, do you guys have recommendations?
No, it's just that, generally speaking, it probably provides you a stronger case for the record to do it individually.
Individually? Okay.
I would also add that I think, the applicant had mentioned the findings of fact that she had addressed. In effect, those findings of fact are things that are requirements contained in the statute. I would argue that they have to meet those requirements anyway. So in other words, if you approve based on the criteria you're familiar with, once they come back with plans for submittal and review, they're still going to have to meet those requirements, the screening requirements, the color, all those things. Those are all those are all contained in the statute specifically. Now, having said that, you can add conditions. As you know, you can add virtually any condition you feel is appropriate to meet the requirements as you see fit, and up to and including making these more stringent than they are. So you have significant latitude in addressing specific concerns you may have outside the context of what's written here.
Okay, so I think the process here is that I will read the general criteria for granting a special exception, and I'll read it in the positive, and then I would ask for a motion for that exception. and then we would have discussion and then a vote. Is that correct? Do I have the procedure down right? So I would look for a motion that the general criteria for granting a special exception in this case is in accordance with the comprehensive plan and consistent with the spirit, purposes, and the intent and specific requirements of this chapter to include and the definition and the intent of the district in which the special exception is requested. Do I hear a motion? Do we, I think what was required is we need a motion that just states that in the positive, and somebody.
I will make a motion on that because it is a control-free district, and so it is it does correspond with that.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Then that exception is carried. So then I would be looking for a motion to say that the general criteria for granting a special exception is in the best interest of the county, the convenience of the community, and the public welfare. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that this special exception is in the best interest of the county, the convenience of the community, and public welfare. We all need public cell service. We don't need dead spots, and we are all going to use it, so it's in our best interest to have the tower.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This is aye. All in
Well, I
favor,
was
say
going to
aye.
make a comment. And I disagree that it meets that requirement, mainly because I don't know that the necessary research went into, if it's an offload from a capacity standpoint, I don't think that we can definitively say that it's in the best interest of the county to put it in that general location. I grew up in very, very close to where this tower is going to go, and I'm familiar with the area, and there's hundreds and hundreds of farmland not backed up to two neighborhoods in that general area. If it has to be in the north side of Highway 11, there's plenty of Highway 11 corridor down going towards Walhalla High School, with this affecting far less homes. And then, like Mr. Rucat said earlier, if it doesn't have to be in that quadrant, that opens up a good portion of the Walhalla area that could be put where it doesn't affect as many people. I'm not sure that this specific location for the intent of this tower to offload service instead of picking up new service is of the best interest of the county.
Is there other discussion about that? What I wonder is if they had more time and they looked at more options, would they really come out with anything different than this already, you know?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't do the research for a living, but I could definitely give you a fairly long list of phone numbers of folks that call that don't have neighborhoods next to this site. Just being honest with you. And maybe if it was more of an open discussion with the West Union community, and time was given, maybe some different ideas will be thrown out there. I understand the kicking the can down the road thing, and I completely agree with it. But I think that I don't know that I've seen the proof that this is the absolute best interest of the county to put it in this specific area, given the information that was provided, that it was not a cell phone coverage type tower. It's basically offloading another tower, so I think.
You're from this area.
I
How
am.
many times have you driven down Highway 11 and your phone dropped when you got at the bottom of Larry Brant Hill is what I call it?
Larry Brant Hill?
Yeah, the long straight stretch right there at the corn maze.
Yeah.
My phone drops
I
out
agree,
there
I
every
agree.
time.
I think up that area, headed towards Pickens Highway.
Yes.
The one, you know, I was out there this weekend, I was out there this weekend and I said the same thing because I knew this was coming up, that, that whole Butler Addis corridor on the right of land, I call it that, I know he doesn't own all that, didn't own all that, but that whole right side of the road there, it's completely undeveloped farmland with no homes over
Also
there.
in the 100-year floodplain, it can't be.
Yeah, well, I don't think the whole piece of property is, but, we can look at that.
Where the corn maze is the 100-year floodplain.
Oh, I understand that the farm is.
But the other side of the coin is, we gotta really let Verizon do their job. I mean, they don't wanna build a tower where it doesn't make any sense to build a tower for their own network. I mean, if their job is to provide that service, we gotta rely on them to figure out where the best place to put that tower would be. I mean, in light of everything else, but
I would totally agree with that. I think that the only thing that changed, because all the information I reviewed before this, and a lot of the extra research I did was based on cell phone coverage type stuff. But this being that, you know, they're providing us a service, that the service doesn't seem to be related to coverage as much as it does just being able to offload some of their data on another tower. It seems as it doesn't really matter where it is.
But it is, it is,
It is
if
a
you look
service.
at, if you look here at the coverage map, you see there, the string being right here, it's yellow and red, which means not good coverage. Then if you look on the second page that shows, remember, green's good.
I'm not saying it doesn't improve it.
Well,
I'm just
I mean,
saying
yeah,
that that's
and-
not the primary, she stated that the primary purpose of it was to offload it.
Right.
Call for a vote.
Well,
I mean,
we've
you
got,
can certainly
yeah.
vote. I was just saying
yeah.
my opinion, so.
Yeah,
we-
well, that's fine, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, that's what makes a good board is lots of
Yeah,
opinion and ideas. But, so as we stand right now, we have a vote for,
No, we have a motion
Have a
without a
motion.
second.
No, I second.
You
he
did second.
seconded.
Yeah, and we had
And we had
discussion.
some discussion, so are we ready for vote?
What's the motion again?
The motion is that the approval of this exception is in the best interest of the county, the convenience of the community, and the public welfare.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay.
Oh,
That's it.
How many nays? Three? Okay. Okay, it was defeated.
I was an aide.
Well, you can vote.
Well,
That makes it 3-3.
ah,
You yeah.
You got to
okay, I
vote,
vote aye,
so it's 3-3.
but it's deadlocked, so what does that mean?
Who wants to flip a coin?
3-3 will not carry the motion.
Okay,
As you know, you have to find all of these criteria.
Yeah, so that's,
right.
in order to approve it.
So a tie vote is a nay vote. Okay,
Well, our problem is obvious here now, we're missing that seventh
Right.
member.
but does this, so that means it's,
that's it.
that's it?
Unless you wanted to reconsider your vote, unless you wanted to make a motion to reconsider. The same outcome is going to occur again. You know,
So if they wanted to come back and Verizon wanted to come back again and and they could ask for a special exception again?
I'd have to review the code on it to be sure how long they have.
I'm sorry, all, I'm not sure what our procedure is at this
But
point,
you
so.
could,
It's a nay vote right now, it should stay as a nay vote. You've done your due diligence, if that person isn't here, they're not here. We've done ours.
I agree.
Recommend to Verizon, A, their website shows that they have fabulous coverage here and terrible coverage in Mountain Rest. So pursue Mountain Rest. And B, your perfect spot is right next to Coyo. Now, she
mentions you contacted them. They are a Japanese-owned company. Maybe you have to try in another language, but keep trying. Itron, Toyo, you have all these industrial places.
There's a ton of industrial places that think that.
Well, I think Verizon, in its best interest would be obviously to listen to you all for other ideas. I mean, this is, but I don't think we're gonna do any good by continuing the discussion here, because we've already
Amen.
voted, so I think that's
Yep.
a mute issue.
Yep. Do we have any old business?
Any other business?
Well, I guess what I was just trying to figure out is is there anything we need to do on this anymore? Are we done with this?
By the, what the rules say is if one of those four are defeated, then that's a ballgame.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Then the next item on the agenda is old business. Do we have any old business? Okay, any new business? How about the next meeting? Any idea whether we'll have a,
Have not received any applications yet, so very possible you won't meet again until January. We don't know yet.
okay. All right, then the meeting adjourned. Well, I guess I need to ask for a motion to adjourn.
We need a motion.
I make a motion.
Right, okay, I make a motion to adjourn. Yeah, interesting.